Okay, maybe we can begin now. Professor Mustafa.
Yes, right now I can hear you. Yes.
Okay,
we can
thank
start.
you. Okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Salam.
And good morning for Professor Dr. Mustafa Sami Topcu. And good afternoon for my students and colleagues here, because this is at 14 p.m. here. We are happy today because even though Professor Mustafa Sami is very busy, but he still will share his knowledge about socioscientific issues, the topic of our student general today. And Professor Mustafa, welcome to Physics Education Department, University of Sriwijaya in Palembang, Indonesia. Although virtually, we are undergraduate student, and Professor Mustafa is from Faculty of Education, Department of Mathematics and Science Education, Yildiz Technical University. He has published many articles in many journal and international forum, and one of his interest in his research is about socioscientific issues and argumentation. And today we have a chance to hear from Professor Mustafa about this topic, because we have just 1 hour. Maybe it's better for us to start our program, and maybe Professor Mustafa will deliver his presentation until 14:45, maybe here. It means 10:45 Turkey times, and
yes.
then 15 minutes for question and answer. I think that enough. Okay, Professor Mustafa, time here is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. May I share my screen?
Right okay, now? Of course.
Yeah, okay. Maybe I will start with my screen sharing. Okay. Hi everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me for this presentation. Today I'm going to talk about socioscientific issues and socioscientific based instruction with you. So first of all, I'd like to start with my book. It's just published in Turkish, but still I'm going to work on it. It's named Socioscientific Issues and Socioscientific Based Instruction. Recently, 4th edition just published, and still I'm working on these topics. So I like to start with a video showing us a very good example of SSI, and then we can continue to discuss SSI and SSI-based instruction. So right now I will share a video with you. Do you see the screen? And
okay, it's well.
Yeah, okay.
Can you lower the sound? Can you make the sound louder, Prof. Mustafa?
Okay, so as you see in the video, there is some, excuse me, just, okay. Yeah, as you see in the video, there is some bacteria which are very resistant to antibiotics. So using antibiotics in daily life sometimes is not very good way to prevent from the diseases. So this is this video includes socioscientific issues named as antibiotic resistance. So in daily life we are using antibiotics, but sometimes bacteria can be a very resistant to these antibiotics. So in daily life we are facing many socioscientific issues. As you see on the picture, global warming, and also antibiotic resistance or genetic engineering. These are all examples of socioscientific issues in daily life. So in my presentation, I will talk about the characteristics of socioscientific issues. Specifically, I will focus on COVID-19 pandemic as an SSI example, and also I will examine the SSI in K-12 science program and SSI instruction model, informal reasoning, and argumentation. These are all the topics I will talk about. So, what is the socioscientific issues? The socioscientific issues includes both dimensions, which are social dilemmas and scientific developments. In daily life, we are facing many social dilemmas that are closely related to scientific developments. So in combination of these social dilemmas and scientific developments, we are facing socioscientific issues. So some scientific issues, for example, genetic engineering or antibiotic resistance or, global warming, this kind of socioscientific issues can cause dilemmas in society. And these dilemmas are conceptually, functionally, and technologically related to science. So these issues both include scientific and social dimensions. That's why we name these issues as socioscientific issues. Socioscientific issues are open-ended in nature, often controversial, and have no definite answer, and involve social and scientific dimensions at the same time. So there are at least two conditions that make an issue SSI. When you examine any case, any issue, whether it is SSI or not, you should check these two items. The first item is that SSI is being related to science content and also having a meaning and importance in social life. So what are the basic characteristics of SSI? It should be science-based because, as you know, in daily life we are facing many social issues, social controversies, but we are not interested in. If there is some science connections, we can say that it might be a socioscientific issues. So it should be science-based, developed within the limits of scientific knowledge, requires making choice and forming ideas on a personal and social level. And these topics, since it is very hot topics, frequently included in the media, and also it based on scientific evidence. And as you know, we can face local, national, or global SSI. For example, if any kind of SSI is just happening around you, it's very close to you, it's local, but it can be also global, like global warming, etc. So socioscientific issues can be at local level, national level, or global level. It includes cost and benefit analysis because we don't have any exact response to socioscientific issues. These issues both include some costs and benefits, and also it considers sustainable development, involves values and moral reasoning. So one of the aims of socioscientific issues also is to aware of moral development and also character development, because it is the controversial issues. You are using your emotions, attitudes or some beliefs in order to decide or make decision about any kind of socioscientific issues. And also it requires an understanding of risk and probability, and these topics related to real life. So this is the model of socioscientific issues. You can see some very close concepts to SSI. These concepts are very related to SSI. For example, media, social dilemmas, scientific developments, informal reasoning, argumentation, nature of science, character education, moral values, media. These are all related to socioscientific issues. And when we look at the historical development of socioscientific issues, actually in the 1980s, we are observing science technology society approach. It mainly focuses on the relationship between science, technology, and society. In 1990s, science, technology, society, and environment approach is very popular. And then in the 21st century, we are facing socioscientific issues. So these are very popular issues in science education research area. In the first phase, we are observing some conceptual, epistemological, and theoretical studies because, first of all, researchers are trying to understand what does it mean by saying socioscientific issues and what are the characteristics of socioscientific issues. Then in the second phase of socioscientific research, a researcher tried to develop some teaching models and curriculum development. And their question was how we can teach socioscientific issues in the classroom. And still, lots of researchers are still focusing on socioscientific issues, and they are trying to use these issues as a context for science teaching. Okay. We already gave some examples, but we can say another examples, developments in biotechnology and also treatment of genetic diseases by making change on genes, global warming, genetically modified organisms, cloning, nuclear power plants. These are all socioscientific issues examples. Okay, I specifically search on physics-based socioscientific issues because you are the undergrad physics students. So that's why I checked the literature on physics-based socioscientific issues, and I found some examples. For example, the first example is about hydrogen-fueled buses. When we read the cases between 2004 and 2007, the public transport provider took part in an international study to assess the viability of using hydrogen-fueled buses. As you know, energy is a very big problem nowadays. So people are looking for alternative energies, okay? So hydrogen-fueled buses is an example of alternative energy source. These buses use a hydrogen fuel cell which produce only water and heat as the waste products. At the end of the trail, the Western Australian government decided the cost of this technology was too high and decided not to continue further. As you see, government are trying to make a decision about this controversial issue. When you look this case from one perspective, it's very clean energy. But on the other hand, it costs lots of money. So it's not feasible. So, and then you need to make a decision based on this data, okay? So as you see, it's a controversial, it's not easy to respond, but it is the nature of socio-scientific issues. And wind farms, another example of physics SSI, a cooperative in the local farming community of Kujanobuk, Western Australia, has approval to construct Western Australia's largest wind farm of 74 turbines on agricultural land. At the same time, there was strong local opposition to the wind farm. Students are asked if they were a local wheat and sheep farmer, would they agree to have two wind turbines positions on their property? As you see, for the socio-scientific issues, there are some stakeholders. Maybe it is a good for the government because it's a clean energy and it is maybe not so expensive. But on the other hand, farmers can, might be affected badly because it might affect their, animals or wheat, etc. It's also another controversial issue that not easy to decide on this issue. The last example is about burning rubbish for electricity, waste-to-energy plants. So the two waste-to-energy plants are planned for the construction in Portland in Western Australia. Critics warn toxic emissions from the burning can lead to health and environmental problems. However, supporters advise the plants can provide electricity as well as reduce landfill. So students are asked if they were mayor, would they allow a waste-to-energy plant to build in their council area? As you see, there are different. One of the stakeholders claim that it creates toxic emissions, so it can affect, health and environment problems. It can create this kind of problems. On the other hand, it's a good way of producing energy, but it is still controversial issue. So we can talk about how we can decide this issue as a context. So also, I examined Turkish curriculum, the high school physics curriculum, actually. Maybe also these objectives are, written in your program. But when I examined the physics curriculum, I found some objectives, learning objectives. For example, it evaluates renewable and non-renewable energy source in terms of advantages and disadvantages. I think it's a very good learning environment for socio-scientific issues because, as you know, it is very good to use renewable energy, but sometimes it might cost lots of money, okay? And also maybe it is good to reserve for non-renewable energy source, but it's, it is not useful for the environment. So it's a very good example of learning objective for high school students. Another learning objective is that develops a project for precautions to be taken against global warming. Okay, so students, high school students are developing projects how we can prevent from global warming. So as you know, also there is big discussions about global warming. Is that human induced or just natural, natural thing of world? It's a natural cycle, okay? So it's another good example of learning objectives. And also semiconductor technology also teaches in Turkey as a topic. So solar cells work, for example. Is it good way to use solar cells technology or not? Also, physics students or high school students can discuss about this issue. Otherwise, just teaching physics might not be so interesting for the students. But if you combine these objectives with the daily life conditions, so students will be more engaged in the physics class, I think. Okay, there are also another examples of SSI. For example, production of electrical energy by nuclear plants. Also, it is the case in Turkey. So now our society is discussing about nuclear plants. Now we don't have nuclear plants, but there are lots of discussion about nuclear plant. Is it useful or not? It produces very good energy, but otherwise, on the other hand, it might produce some, dangers for the environment. Or okay, these are the examples of the another socio-scientific, physics-based socio-scientific issues actually. Because when you check the socio-scientific issues, we are facing mostly biology-based socio-scientific issues. For example, genetic engineering, biotechnology, genetically modified foods. These are all, antibiotic resistance. These are all biology-based. But nuclear plants or, these examples can be used in physics teaching contexts. And when we examine the COVID-19 pandemic case closely, as you know, if we say that it is a socio-scientific issue, we should clarify that this is the scientific dimension and this is the social dimension. And there is some controversy about these issues. If we talk about the, this is the scientific dimension, this is the social dimension, and this is the controversial issue, so it can be a socio-scientific issue. Okay, what is the scientific dimension of COVID-19 pandemic? As you know, it originated in Wuhan, China, and it's a new type of coronavirus. And there are some scientific knowledge. I will not read all of them, but I will read some of them. It's because I'm talking about. For example, in the high school biology class, when you teach the DNA and RNA genetic material, so you can use pandemics, COVID-19 pandemics as a socio-scientific context. Okay, so as you see, the size of the virus, these are all scientific dimension of the socio-scientific issues, because these socio-scientific issues provides teachers an opportunity for teaching also biology concepts. As you know, still continues the biological and scientific explanation of the current coronavirus, and also this is the picture and some laboratory observations of the virus. As you see, it's the coronavirus, as you know, is the RNA virus. So what are the social dimension of these socio-scientific issues? Because, as you know, we are talking about socio-scientific issues, so we need to talk about both scientific and social dimensions. So this issue directly affects in economical condition of the governments, okay? Because it creates job loss, import-export effect, transportation sector, tourism sector, private sector, all these sectors are affected by this pandemic. Also, political dimension is a very important part of this SSI, because, as a government, you need to decide some critical decisions. So, for example, closing the schools or, stopping the electricity water cuts, ways to reduce vehicle traffic. These are all related to government decision. And also technological dimension is very related to this SSI, because, during this pandemic area, vaccine production was very important. Also, many companies, respirator production, respirators they produced. Also, there were, some social aspects of this issue. For example, social solidarity, psychological effects of the pandemic on the society. And also, we observed the media aspects of the socio-scientific issues. For example, the presentation of the news on COVID-19 was very important, and responsible media understanding, presentation of panic news. These were all important issues when we have, pandemic times. And also, as you know, this affected our educational life dramatically. we, mostly teach, taught distance education. We use distance education to teach science. So many teachers just firstly, use this kind of technologies, So also we learn how we can use effectively computers and, other connections tools, learning and teaching tools on web. So this was very dramatic change in our educational life, actually. So when we look at the other educational curriculums around the world, for example, United States, England, Great Britain, and also Australia, and also in Turkey, we are, we are observing socio-scientific issues in their curriculum, because they are saying that socio-scientific issues discussion is very important for, growing scientific literate persons. That's why we are observing SSI in many Western and also Eastern countries curriculum. So what does SSI education look like? While we are teaching socio-scientific issues, because when we teach socio-scientific issues, the students are learning science content, and they are doing some scientific practices, for example, argumentation, scientific modeling during this process, Engaging in discourse is another higher order practice for students, which is argumentation, And also they are connecting with media, and also they are using scientific evidence in the conversation, considerations. And also students exploring their own values and commitments. Okay, so what is the purpose of SSI-based education? It helps students to develop the knowledge and practice necessary for their participation in society, and also to analyze and make effective decisions about challenging real-world issues, because every day we are facing challenging real-world issues, So one of the education's aim is to prepare students for the future. So they need to face these challenging real-world issues in the classrooms. Okay, to develop the agency necessary for becoming informed community members and agents of change. These are important for the students, actually. So what about for the research? Teaching isolated ideas doesn't support these goals. Okay, transfer of learning from one context to another is challenging, and students don't typically connect their formal learning opportunities with their lived experience. And also, learners require opportunities to practice learning targets. So, as a summary, SSI can provide context for learning that support these ambitious goals for learning. So, of course, as you remember, in the second phase of SSI research, researchers are trying to match SSI teaching model with the 5E learning model. As you know, a 5E learning model is very popular in education area. In your class, you start with the engagement in your class. You need to start with, engaging activity, and then students will explore, explain, and elaborate scientific content. And then in the last phase, of course, it's evaluation. As you see in the SSI teaching model, you need to start with the SSI. As I start presentation, I started with the video. This is a very tragic video, and it's a very tragic case. So also you can start with your class like, a tragic SSI coming from the media. And then when they engage the class, they will start to use their scientific ideas and practices. Also, they can use some information and communication technologies. And of course, we need some social interactions, group studies, some activities. And then at the end of this teaching model, you need to have some high-level experiences. For example, poster presentation about SSI. So teachers, students as a group can prepare their poster presentations, and they can present their posters to the class. Okay, so as you see on the screen, this instructional model was developed by Stadler and colleagues, and it is very well known SSI teaching model in the area. As you see on the screen, we need to start with the focal issue. It might be vaccination, genetic engineering, or global warming. It depends on your selection of SSI, and you need to present SSI first, okay? And then within the context of SSI, the students can explore some science ideas because they need to learn science content, okay? Also, they will make some scientific practices like argumentation. They will discuss, for example, global warming with their friends. So it is the argumentation. And also, they will develop some modelings. They will draw some models, on the screen. These are all the necessity of this model. At the end of this process, they need to present some culminating experience. It is a synthesizing activity, okay? So as you see, it's another representation of the model. As you see on expecting these learning objectives after implementing SSI-based instruction. For example, students will be aware of the issue. They will learn disciplinary core ideas, physics, chemistry, biology, and they will learn cross-cutting concepts, scientific practice, epistemology of science, and socioscientific reasoning, and also identity. It is also important for identity development, okay? So when we talk about the informal reasoning, I like to talk a little bit about the informal reasoning because it is very important thinking process for SSI-based instruction, okay? So what is the meaning of informal reasoning? It includes a person generate and evaluate complex issues. This reasoning involves reasoning about cause and consequences and about advantage and disadvantage. It underlies attitudes and opinions, involve ill-structured problems that no definite solution, and often involves inductive reasoning problems. As you see, it's a daily life reasoning, When we face any kind of problems in daily life, we are using informal reasoning. So actually, in my dissertation, I focused on the informal reasoning in my dissertation, and I checked the science undergrad students' informal reasoning patterns and informal reasoning quality. But in my presentation, I specifically would like to focus on argumentation because argumentation is the representation of informal reasoning. So it is the representation of the informal reasoning, we can say. So we can continue with the argumentation. What is the argumentation? So we can call it the process of reaching conclusions and discussions through the logic. So in the argumentation process, we are evaluating the evidence. We evaluate alternative thoughts, support claims with the evidence, and also we are trying to rebut the counterpositions. Okay. As you know, there is very popular, argumentation framework developed by Tolman. It is very popular in science education area. I will not explain all of these components, but I will talk about the McNeil's framework because it is, much easier to understand this framework. As you see, we have, claim, evidence, reasoning, and rebuttal. When we argue any kind of, scientific issue or socio-scientific issue, we have one claim, okay? And then, as a researcher, we need to have evidence. With the evidence, we are supporting our claims. So reasoning means that establishing a relationship between the evidence and claim, we can say that it is the reasoning, okay? And as a next step, if we are trying to rebut the counterposition, it means that rebuttal. It's the next and sophisticated level of argumentation, okay? For the middle school students or elementary schools, we are just expecting presenting their claims and evidence and reasoning, that's all. But high, high school students or university students, we also can expect rebuttal. It means that you need to rebut, opposite waves. You need to, rebut the counterposition. Okay. Example of argumentation actually. So as a scientist, you can say that air is a matter. It's a claim. Okay. So you need to have some evidence. So I think air has mass because in the balloon experiment, when we were comparing or weighting the deflated balloon to the balloon filled with air, the balloon filled with air weighed more. It is the evidence, okay? It is just very small experiment, but I am supporting my claim with this evidence. So what is the reasoning in this case? This is because of mass. Mass means the amount of matter in something. The balloon which had air in it has more mass. This is the reasoning. And also I will see another evidence. Another reason why I think air has mass is because in the shrink experiment, it was difficult to push the top of the shrink because the air was blocking it from going down. It is another evidence, okay? So what is the reasoning for this case? The tiny little molecules were trapped in a small space and created more pressure. Air pressure made it difficult to push down because the air takes up space. It is made of matter and has mass. It is true that air is made of matter and has mass. Okay, this is the reasoning for, but as you see, it is the scientific argumentation. It is not socio-scientific argumentation. It is just discussing a scientific case. So why we are using argumentation and socio-scientific issues together? Because socio-scientific issues provide an ideal and perfect context for argumentation, because it is already discussed, controversial issues. So you can easily discuss this issue in your classrooms, okay? So a good argumentation environment can be provided on any socio-scientific issue by evaluating and supporting data while also considering opposite views. Because as you know, in the socio-scientific issues, some people will support one idea, the other people support another idea. So it's already very good context for, argumentation. Okay, in the last part of my presentation, I will suggest one workshop. I will suggest to you one workshop that you can use in your classroom. Okay. So, but it is biological based, but you can use it, you can transfer, this experience context, okay? First of all, I like to read the case because, as you know, for the socio-scientific issue-based instruction, we need socio-scientific topics and content, okay? So, when I read the case, for well over 50 years, farmers and ranchers have given antibiotics to the animals they raise for human food production. As you see, the title of this case is Use of Antibiotics in Agriculture. At this point in the time, most animals raised for food production in US, like cows, chickens, receive antibiotics. Antibiotics given to farm animals can promote growth and reduce disease. This makes it possible for farmers and ranchers to produce large fewer health problems. As you see, there are different stakeholders in the SSI case. So this is this paragraph is about the farmers. This is the one of the most important stakeholders for this case. Okay, farmers, of course, supporting the case because they are produced larger animals and fewer health problems. Recently, on the other hand, groups interested in human healthcare issues and the environment have raised concerns about widespread use of antibiotics in agriculture. One of these concerns is that naturally occurring bacteria will develop resistance to antibiotics that have been applied. If bacteria are resistant to particular antibiotics, then that antibiotic will not be effective in treating disease. caused by that bacteria in animals or humans. As you know, we are saying is antibiotic resistance. If we use frequently antibiotics, it will be useless, as you know. Healthcare groups have warned that antibiotic resistance bacteria generated on farm can be transmitted to humans through meat and poultry products. This is another stakeholder group. This is, this is the group of healthcare issues, or this is the citizens maybe. But they think that it is not good way to use these antibiotics in the agriculture because it will cause, antibiotic resistance. Okay. Another environmental groups have also noted that there are higher levels of antibiotic resistance bacteria in soil and water around large animal production facilities, and that these changes can create new environmental problems. It is another opposite view, okay? So also, supporters of current farming practices argue that antibiotic use is important for the human treatment of farm animals, and that some of the antibiotics used in agriculture are not even used with humans. They also suggest that most documented problems with antibiotic resistance bacteria can be tied to overuse of antibiotics in humans, not animals. As you see, this is the, another opposite view of using, so this actually view supports the using of antibiotics in the agriculture. So as a government, US Department of Agriculture is considering creation of new regulation for the use of antibiotics in agriculture. So government need to make, final decision on this issue. But as you see, there are different stakeholders. At the end of this, case presentation, you can ask your students prepare their poster. They can say that, for example, we should use antibiotics for agriculture, or we shouldn't use antibiotics in agriculture. And then, of course, they need to support their claims with the evidence. So they will collect evidence from scientific articles, media, or other source. And they will prepare their poster. And of course, as you know, technology using in education environment also very popular nowadays. So they can use infogram or, picto chart. These are, Web 2 tools that students can integrate their, pictures, text, or graphics, and then they can present their, poster to the students. It's a synthesizing activity because they will prepare their poster, as a group, and they will support their ideas, claims with the scientific evidences. So also this is a very good, example of workshop that I like to share with you. And thank you for listening to me. And again, thank you for your invitation. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Okay, thank you, Professor Mustafa. Exactly. Now is 14:44, and we have 16 minutes for question and answer. Please, if you have answer, you can ask Professor Mustafa. Any question?
Any questions? I don't have.
Okay. Bu Nelly?
Ya,
Oke, ya.
ya Pak Yusuf. Kenapa Pak Yusuf?
Ada pertanyaan? Kalau tidak dalam bahasa Indonesia, nanti diterjemahkan ke bahasa Inggris.
Oke. Pertanyaannya, penelitian terbaru apa yang berkembang di Turki sekarang ini yang berhubungan dengan fisika?
Okay, Professor Mustafa. The question is the new topic, the new theme in physics about this SSI?
So could you ask again, please?
What is the new topic in physics that in the research area about physics, about SSI? I mean.
Okay, so you are asking about physics, right? Physics SSI topics, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, yeah. As I, presented to you in my presentation, using some fields, electrical cars, use of electric car, or use of some fields or renewable energy or non-renewable energy also, and also I can say that some use of technological tools for our daily life. It can be a good, it can be an examples of SSI, as I think.
Okay.
So of course, you are physics, educators. Maybe you can think new SSIs. If we can talk about the SSI, it should include both scientific dimension and social dilemmas. If it includes all these dimensions, so you can use it in your classroom.
Okay, thank you. Maybe.
Terima kasih Pak Yus.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Another question, please.
Prof. Mustafa, why social science to be new issue in science education research now?
What is the reason?
Its background.
Yeah.
Social science to be new topic in science education research.
So, socioscientific issues in science education you are talking about, right?
Why SSI become the trend issue in science education research?
Yeah. Okay. So why it is important for science education?
Yes.
Yeah. So why it is important? Because as you know, as a science educators, we are not just developing, students' scientific knowledge. We need to also develop their, character, moral development. Also, we need to support their character development, identity development, and also moral development. So SSI is not only effective in their content learning, also it is effective in their development in as a science literate person. So because we are not expecting that all of the students will be a science teacher or doctor or engineering, but they need to be a science literate persons. Okay. So as I said earlier, SSI is not effective in developing just content knowledge. It's also effective in developing students' moral development, character development, and also we are practicing some science, scientific modeling or argumentation. These are very well-known scientific practices, as you know. So also it develops students, not just rational, also emotional development, because as you see on the socioscientific issues, many SSI include some moral, ethical, and also some emotional issues. So as a citizens, we are facing these issues in daily life. So in the classroom, maybe they will face this kind of issues and they will learn how to make informed decisions about these complex issues, So we are preparing students for the future. So that's why we are integrating these kind of issues, social related issues in the classroom.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Students? Another question, please.
Ini ada yang ini siapa nih? No listening.
Okay.
The chatting.
Chats, on the chats, we have questions.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm reading. Thank you for
From Sardianto. From Mr. Sardianto.
Okay, yes, I am reading now. One of the innovations that can is the development of teaching materials. Yeah, thank you for your question. I think it's very good question. Yeah, as I said earlier, teaching material development is very important step of this, instruction. So, as I said earlier, I think global warming, sometimes it's a chemistry topic, but sometimes it's a physical topic, but we can use, global warming as a context for, physics, science teaching, as also maybe you can use the, plants, nuclear plants or other energy producers, as a physics content, and also you can use some renewable energy or non-renewable energy source in daily life. Also, there are some technologies that are used in medical, medical technologies, X-ray or, MR technologies. They are highly related to physics, so we are using X-ray or MR for our, health issues, but also it might be, not good for our life. So you can create this kind of issues. Can all social issues be solved by science? Yeah, it's also another good question. Thank you for your questions. Of course, we cannot solve all of the social issues by science. That's why we are expecting that issues, socio-scientific issues could have both social dilemmas and also scientific dimensions. But of course, there are some social issues. For example, how I can say, for example, some social rights, for example, social rights. So this is the social issues that you can discuss anytime, but you cannot solve this problem, I think, with the science. Are there characteristics of social issues that can be solved by science? Can be science. Okay. Yeah, of course, maybe for the social science, if we say that for social science, they can also focus on these issues and they can try to solve these issues by the argumentation method. But as a science educators, we are especially looking for the science dimension, okay? For example, if there is a new technology and this technology is related to science, as you know, so if this technology creates some social dilemmas or controversies in the society, then we can interested in this issue, okay? For example, COVID-19 is a very good example of socio-scientific issue because it includes scientific dimension, because at the, previous times when we faced the COVID-19 first time, people didn't understand why it is so dangerous to our life, Maybe some people are resistant to, use the vaccination or using masks, but when they understand the science behind this, virus, so why this virus is so dangerous, then they, start to use or, vaccination, and they start to use, mask because they understand the science behind this issue. It is a socio-scientific issue. Also, maybe it is related to, physics, using electrical car, it is a good idea. It is very clean energy, but it costs lots of money, and also it's not feasible use this kind of technology for some areas. So this is the, socio-scientific issues. So if we use this kind of technologies, for example, as a physics teachers, you know, when you teach electricity concept in your class, if you give an example or if you create a discussion about use of electrical car in daily life, maybe this teaching will be much more interested to students, you know. So this is the nature of socio-scientific issues, actually. This is not easy cases. This is not easy to solve, but when they solve these problems, they are developing their higher order thinking skills because it's conflicted issues. It is not easy to answer, okay? It is not a mathematical calculation because it comes from the daily life, social life.
So, but what about in the assessment? It means that it's about wrong and right answer.
Yeah. Yes, assessment part is, yeah, it's very good question also, because in the assessment part, you can assess students' physics learning or biology learning. It depends on your content, okay? It is very easy way, but how you can assess effectiveness of SSI-based instruction? It's a big question, okay? So mostly when you look the literature, researchers are looking for the argumentation level, for example. When we teach SSI-based instruction, their argumentation level or increased or not, or they develop scientific modeling or not. You know, these are examples of scientific practices, because when we teach socio-scientific issues, we are not just focusing on content learning. We are also focusing on science practices and also their, you know, attitudinal, for example, their attitude or their motivation change or not, you know. So we can assess this kind of output. Also, Sadler and colleagues developed a survey entitled Socioscientific Reasoning Survey. And when you implement this survey at the end of the implementation of SSI-based instruction, you can assess their reasoning developed or not, okay? This socio-scientific reasoning measurement tool consists of inquiry, multiple perspective, complexity, and skepticism. So their skepticism improve or not. They view the case complex or not. So you can measure all of these components with the socio-scientific reasoning also, you know, measurement, but it's not easy. You know, when every time when they implement this survey, socio-scientific reasoning, their reliability was very low because it is not easy to measure reasoning, okay? It is easy to maybe measure to learning or, you know, content learning, but it is not easy to measure reasoning.
Okay, thank you, Professor Mustafa. I think my clock moved faster this afternoon because now it's 1 minute to 3 o'clock here. And I think this is the end of our program. And let me to give you a certificate of presentation virtually. And I will send this certificate by email.
Thank you very much.
This is the certificate.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for your certificate and also your invitation.
Okay, thank you for your valuable time for your presentation, good presentation, and we are very appreciate. And sometime we hope that we can meet physically, maybe in Turkey, and or maybe you can go to Indonesia and we can meet someday.
Yes, of course. You can come to Turkey. Istanbul is a very beautiful city.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Mustafa Sami Topcu, for your presentation. And this is the end of our program today. And good afternoon and good morning for you in Turkey. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Alaikum salam. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Thank you. Bye-bye.